This is TechTalk Detroit with Brian Spurgeon and Chuck Lobert. TechTalk Detroit brings you the latest in tech news and Detroit happenings every week.
Well, welcome back to TechTalk Detroit. I'm here with Brian Spurgeon, and then we've got another partner on the line with us from Arctic Wolf. We've got Brad. Brad, welcome. We're really happy that you could take the time to be with us this morning.
Yeah,
this
definitely.
Afternoon, I guess. I'm losing track of time. It's I guess just turned into afternoon, but it's funny. I woke up this morning and I was trying to remember what day it was. I think it's Friday. Seems to be how things go now. So, yeah, are you guys?
Wait, it's Friday.
You guys? Yeah, right.
Am I on the right podcast?
So over at Arctic Wolf, how have you guys been dealing with everything? You know, what's changed for you guys?
Yeah, it's been a pretty wild journey. So we actually had a team out at RSA this year for a big security conference in San Francisco. And one of the earlier cases of poor people that got sick was at RSA. And we were checking through our booth scans and actually identified that they had visited our booth at some point. We weren't totally sure who was there. So out of abundance of precaution, we actually sent all of our employees home and have been work from home since then. So I think we were one of the earlier companies that actually did the work from home thing. And honestly, the transition has been pretty easy. I think that we were in a really good position to be able to work remotely for almost the entire company. So that's good. And I think productivity has been really good. I think there's a really positive attitude. It's actually pretty fun. I talk more with colleagues that I didn't usually interact with. It's good. It's been a good thing, actually, in a bad moment, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Brian and I have mentioned a few times that I think we're more productive working from home like this, but at the same time, it's like you miss just the being around everybody and being in the office and all of that. So it's definitely different, but been able to at least stay productive and keep things going.
Yeah, definitely. I was out and about and actually saw a coworker out in public while we were doing some grocery shopping, and I wanted to run up to him and give him a hug, but instead I slowly walked over to him and
right.
Gave him a high five, an air high five without touching. Yep. So it was funny to see that bond that you developed working with people and then seeing them in public. It's a very exciting thing.
Yeah. We've been trying to keep up with doing like virtual happy hours and stuff like that to at least kind of keep some of that camaraderie, that culture going. That's helped, but it's still not quite the same.
Definitely.
I think everybody's itching to get back. At this point, it's get back to somewhat normal, but take the good with the bad.
Yeah. I love the working from home. It just would be nice to, have the option to, run into the office and see everybody and say hi and play a game of ping pong and so on. So, it's definitely different. But what we didn't mention, kind of coming into this is, Arctic Wolf, who mentioned they're a partner of ours, but we didn't talk about what you guys do. So, maybe you want to hit on that and just kind of explain, what does Arctic Wolf do? And then, obviously you're a partner of ours now for, I think about 2 years now. It's been a while, great partner of ours. So why don't you touch a little bit on, what you guys do?
Yeah, so we're a Silicon Valley based company out of Sunnyvale. I office out of our Minneapolis office. So what we do is essentially we monitor networks, we look for security events, and then we escalate it over to our partners and let them know kind of what we identified and what needs to happen to get the problem resolved for. We also kind of function in a proactive fashion as well by trying to understand like what the attack surface is through vulnerability scanning and being able to leverage that information for our partners to be able to go in and perform patch management and things like that.
Yeah, so for us, you act as our full managed security operations center. The 24/7 monitoring and everything, and remediation, all of that kind of stuff. So it's really our real high end security offering is working with you guys through that. So on that note, you guys are specialists in the security field. I'm sure with everything going on right now, all of the bad people have just stopped trying to attack and stopped all the threats, and they've taken a break, right?
We're good, guys.
Yeah.
Job well done.
Hackers are on stay at home. Strict orders.
What have you guys been seeing since this has all started?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not over. The fight is still going on. We still see attackers doing their thing. If you think about it from their perspective, think about you're a criminal, right? Maybe you work for a nation state, or maybe you are just part of like an organized, almost a mafia in a sense, and you see the entire world going to work remotely, and there's a big gap there, because you look at home networks, and a lot of home networks, like their routers, are typically one of the easier entry points, because oftentimes you'll see admin password as the username and password for the router modem. So gaining access that way, being able to redirect DNS traffic and do all sorts of really nasty things is pretty easy to do. And then if you think about it from your own personal perspective, you're at home, you're more comfortable, right? And that level of comfort and safety that you feel being at home is obviously a great thing. But when it comes to work, and when it comes to thinking about security, that can be a bit problematic, because when you receive that email, that typically you might trigger it as being suspicious. If you're in your house, there might be a level of comfort there that you're more willing to click and do something that you wouldn't typically do, because you're a little less diligent from that stance. And then there's a ton of fear and uncertainty and doubt, FUD, that is out there around COVID-19 specifically. And criminals know that. They leverage that FUD that you have, and they use that against you from a social engineering standpoint. So we've definitely seen an increase of different types of attacks. I've been talking a lot about COVID and how it affects security, and I've kind of come to the conclusion that it's almost become like a branding in a sense. Like we see emails that are targeted emails around COVID, and you'll see COVID all over the place. And there's a lot of similarities, again, trying to strike fear, uncertainty, and doubt in people's minds, and trying to put limits on things to really incentivize people to click on things that they wouldn't typically click on. And it's all coming back to the idea that, this whole thing is scary. People are getting sick and dying, and everybody just wants information. And we've seen scams out there. Just read the news. There's plenty of scams that we've all heard of like download this Android app, and you can get a heat map of all of the COVID cases. And it's not really a heat map. It's just another form of malware on your Android device.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. It's everybody right now, especially with what's going on, day to day information changes. There seems really nobody knows when we're going to get back to a point of being normal. So, here in Michigan, we just extended our stay at home yesterday for another couple of weeks. So I think what you're seeing is people they can't get enough information, because there's a lot of uncertainty out there now around COVID. And I think when I open up my email box, it's just, every 4 or 5 emails is something related to COVID. So I think you bring up some very good points, honestly, that I hadn't thought about. Being at home, you are more comfortable. I think that's one of the reasons why, Chuck, you were saying productivity's up, right? You're in a spot where you're real comfortable, you can concentrate, but at the same time, it is a different mindset being in your home than it is being in the office, right? I know for me, when I'm around my friends, you got a different approach to how you socialize with your friends than maybe you do with your colleagues, right? Because it's all about a mindset. And I think when you're at home,
we were friends.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the thing. It's just, it is all about a mindset. And I think you hit the nail on the head. There's maybe not as much precaution. You're in between working on things. You want to see that email that just came in. Oh, is this something new that I didn't catch yet? Right. And I think the other thing is these press conferences are going on during the workday. I know for me, I can't catch any of them right now. So there is a bit of if information's coming in, you want to see it. So I think you're right. There is a lot of opportunity. And, I've seen a lot of data out there that has shown phishing attempts are up significantly during this time, I think, as a result of that. So,
and unfortunately, they're good at what they do, right? I mean, we've seen some of these emails that we've talked about previously, where it looks like it's coming from a hospital. It looks like it's telling you that you're in danger. Click here to find out more, type of thing. And with everything that's going on in people's minds right now, I think they see it, and before they have a chance to think, wait a minute, this probably isn't true, they think, oh no, I better click on that and find out if I'm actually in danger. So, unfortunately, the bad guys are very good at what they do, and the good guys are very good at what they do as well. But there's that constant battle back and forth of, trying to beat one another, so to speak. So it's just a constant thing, and that's really where the monitoring and everything really comes into play now. Is as much protection as you're going to put in place, there's only so much that you can do. Somebody's going to still get past it. And then, now how do you know that happened or not?
Yeah, exactly. And just thinking of security from an information security standpoint and kind of a process control standpoint, you implement a control. So let's say you put a firewall in place. That firewall is only as good as being able to function as a secondary check to be able to verify the effectiveness of that control, right? And that's exactly what we do over at Arctic Wolf, to be able to act as that second layer or that second check to ensure the effectiveness of those preventative tools. An interesting thing that I was just thinking about, I've been asked a lot, like, what do we do differently? And obviously there's some very unique things around working from home and different things to be mindful and diligent of. And I'm a big fan of thinking skeptically, in the sense that, like, when you receive that email, be skeptical of if it's a real thing or if it's not. But it's funny. I think everybody is looking for like a silver bullet, and it just doesn't exist. And it all comes back to the basics. And I tend to harp on that quite a bit. But in times of like we're in right now, it all comes back to the basics of being diligent, use good passwords, use a password manager, multi-factor as much as you possibly can, make sure that you have checks and balances in place, and effectively make sure that, your computer systems are completely updated, monitor them for to be in a hardened state to make sure that they're locked down, especially in home networks, which are basically the Wild West. It all comes back to the basics of security. And that's, for me at least, my recommendations on kind of how to handle all of this.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I think that's important to keep in mind. Not everybody has a security operations center in place today, but what are the basics that everybody, regardless of what kind of industry they're in or how big they are or how small they are, what are the basics that everybody has to make sure that they have today from a security perspective. So it's certainly some good points. And then having that mindset of looking at everything from a standpoint of, does this make sense that I'd be getting this right now? Does it double checking where it's coming from, who it's sent to, all of those different types of things that we don't always think about, but really that's, especially right now, what we really need to be looking at even more so, the fact that we're all working from home and we don't have all of those typical precautions in place and protections in place that we have at our business network. So it's definitely some good stuff to keep in mind for sure. And I think even going beyond that, when we talk about a security operations center, like I say, a lot of companies today don't have something like that in place. They don't have that 24/7 monitoring in place. But why, what kinds of companies should be looking at something like that, and where's the value for them?
Sure, it's a really good question, and I think there's a big misconception in the market And obviously I'm a little biased. I work for Arctic Wolf, but even before I came over to Arctic Wolf, I was a big fan of if you guys are familiar with the CIS critical security controls, a huge fan of those controls because they really help small and medium sized as well as enterprise organizations really understand how to invest into security and kind of what that journey looks like. If you look at them, they're numbered 1 to 20. There's different implementation groups, which kind of gets into the weeds a little bit, but essentially you start at 1 and you work your way to 20. And then you start to build on those implementation groups, right? That's effectively what those are. And if you look at the basic security controls, it's all around vulnerability management, identifying what you have, controlled use of administrative privileges, and monitoring and auditing logs. And those are really the core of what Arctic Wolf does. And really the reason why I came over to Arctic Wolf, because I really wanted to work for a company that was doing the basics. Prior to Arctic Wolf, I worked for companies and did a lot of different risk assessments. And I noticed that companies of all shapes and sizes just don't understand the basics and don't practice the basics well. And I wanted to work for a company that would help small and medium-sized organizations be able to do that. So that's why I came over to Arctic Wolf. And I use that to say that really organizations of any shape and size could use an Arctic Wolf-like service, whether it's us or a competitor of ours. It's a valuable thing to be able to provide those checks and balances and ensure that things are up to date and patched and all that really important stuff. With that, I embrace the fact that oftentimes security is regulatory driven and investment is regulatory based or a reactionary investment. But I think that between the news over the last couple of years, people are starting to also see that their friends' businesses down the street are being shut down from like ransomware attacks or just compromises of customer data, which puts a really bad reputation for that organization. And reputation is something really hard to like gain back, and to get trust back is really difficult. And I think that people, and I'm hoping, and I'm starting to effectively see this on the grounds, companies are starting to kind of change their mindset a little bit with security, and they want to lean in because they understand that there's real business risk that's associated with it, but also they just don't want to be another statistic.
Yeah, I think you see that a lot too. Like with just going back even a couple of years, it was very common for us to get the response when we would bring up discussions about security and the need to put a focus on it. A lot of the small and mid-sized businesses, they just felt like, we're small, nobody's going to be concerned about us, right? We're just a small business. What do we have to do? And the reality is that's a lot of what I think the focus is on. I think everybody gets consumed with turning on the news and seeing, a large corporation that was breached. And the assumption is they are the ones that most at risk because they are a larger entity. They have a lot more at stake, but it's just not the case. And I think, to your point, especially over this last year or so, for whatever reason, companies are starting to understand a lot more that there is a lot more at stake for them. I think you see a lot of data where small businesses are not prepared. They do get breached, and a lot of times they can't recover from it. And press is and public opinion is huge, especially for a small business. I know for us, we rely heavily on the service we give, on referrals to grow the business. And if we were to be breached, I have to imagine it would be very hard to recover from something like that. So that's why, us as a small business ourselves, it's the utmost importance to put a focus on security, because unlike that large corporation who has so many assets, they can afford to flood the press with, material to regain reputation, right? Small businesses are not going to have that kind of ability. So I think that's a very good point. It's beyond the initial threat, but it's also the reputation of the company.
Yeah, definitely. And think about it from the attacker's point of view, right? The criminal's point of view. There's tools now that just go out and scan the internet, and they look for things like, we were just talking about this earlier, default passwords for things, whether it's your home router modem or if it's your accounts for work. there's a lot of automation involved in the criminal side of security, and they leverage that. And they also realize that once they get that first foothold in, small companies invest less and have less technical prowess than an enterprise does, which means for the criminal, it's going to be a little less return, but you can do way more and be able to, you look at it from like the mass perspective. If I'm a criminal, I can spend, 6 months trying to attack this enterprise, or I can spend a week and get into a small business and make probably more money over the grand scheme, because I'm going to be able to effectively attack more small businesses than I will be able to actually get into one of those whale enterprises. So if you put yourself in that mindset, then you start to realize that maybe small businesses are, I'm not saying a bigger target, but they're definitely a target.
I always think too that those small businesses may be entry points into the larger enterprise as well. They may have, for instance, an insurance agent may be a small business on their own, but they may have a portal into the larger insurance agencies. So once you compromise the small business, now you may have easier access into that larger enterprise as well.
Yeah, definitely, Chuck. Think of the Target breach that stemmed from an HVAC provider that had access into Target systems.
Yeah, I'm safe though. I changed my password to password with an @ so I went away from the default. I'm good.
Yep, capital P. You got it.
Should I have a capital too?
If you're listening to the podcast, if I can leave you with one thing to do, is use a password manager and use password phrases.
Yeah.
And there's no need to remember a password outside of that one phrase that you use to log into your password manager.
Yeah, it's a very good piece of advice right there. That's what I do personally as well. It's definitely a good recommendation for everybody for sure. So password managers, they're cheap, but they can really help by automatically giving you those those difficult high quality passwords for sure. So how else, when we talk about Arctic Wolf and all of the changes and everything, what are you guys doing to kind of keep, the business afloat, so to speak, keep that culture going? I mentioned, we're doing the virtual happy hours, we're doing just regular one-on-one meetings, team meetings, all of that kind of stuff. We were talking yesterday about doing so we had somebody new start with us, a couple of new people start with us since this has all started. And usually what we do is we have lunch at the office, we all gather around and kind of, talk and get to know each other and talk about our history with the company and all of that. So obviously we can't all gather around a table right now and do that, but we talked about doing that virtually and, bringing in lunch for everybody to their homes and doing something like that. What has Arctic Wolf been doing to kind of keep the culture alive, so to speak?
Yeah. So we've been doing a lot of the same, a lot of the virtual happy hours, morning status meetings, not status meetings, that's a weird way to put it. Just morning, like touch base meetings, talking through like what are we going to see during the day. And then as an entire organization, we come together weekly where our CEO, Brian Naismith, actually goes through and actually gives kind of a state of the union, if you will, of Arctic Wolf. And there's been a lot of that. We actually just finished up our fiscal year and things were really good. It was really positive. We're really excited about that. So yeah, there's a lot of like just keeping in touch with people and making sure that the dialogue is open and available for everyone. Our HR team has been a phenomenal. They have really stepped up to the plate, making sure that everybody was okay, making sure everybody was getting the help that they needed and felt comfortable and safe and all that stuff. It's been a really good thing.
That's good to hear. That's awesome. Yeah, we love hearing when companies care about their staff and do what they can to help take care of them for sure. So that's really nice to hear. Well, as a client and partner of Arctic Wolf, we do use it internally as well. We really appreciate you taking the time. I know, like you mentioned, that you had the day off today. See you sipping your Starbucks. I'm a little bit jealous. I feel like I need to go get some. But we really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us this afternoon.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me. Thanks to the entire Vision Computer Solutions team. Definitely would do this any day off. Let me know.
Yeah, no, we
Sounds
really
good.
appreciate it. And I got just a couple tidbits to leave with here, just from some notes I took on some good points you brought up, just to recap. So just with everybody working from home, obviously we're all a little bit more vulnerable. So there's some extra precautions that should be taken. First off, make sure that you have your default passwords changed on your routers. Don't make it so easy to get in. You wouldn't leave your front door unlocked at night when you go to sleep. So don't do the same with your network. Also, password manager is key. Totally agree. You can set complex passwords that you would never be able to remember in a million years and forget about them. You just have one to manage, and it makes it much more secure and easy. Also, MFA wherever you can. It's something that we preach. I feel like that comes up on almost every podcast, but I'm glad to hear that point driven again. And I think one of the just a best practice is to follow skepticism when it comes to emails and different links and material being sent your way. Approach it with skepticism. Have the mindset that this could potentially be something that would put me at risk. So let's make sure that if it does look anything that should be concerned, that you take some extra precautions with it.
Yeah, good points. Yeah, we appreciate the recap, and again, we appreciate your time, Brad, and we'll talk to everybody again next week.
Interact with Tech Talk Detroit at techtalkdetroit.com or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.